Welcome to the Line Break podcast, a brand new and exciting adventure that will hopefully fill all of your rugby needs. And if it doesn't, it's probably the language barrier. This is your host, Charlie, and let's get on with it.
For this, me and Charcheese had a bit of a chat earlier, one-to-one, so just in Slack.
Yeah.
And really, based off what we kind of discussed last time, I was just curious about the changes to the Welsh teams in the British and Irish Cup, and that's what kind of kicked it off. And I just started, using Irish rugby as a reference point. I started explaining how, how did the provinces come about, how it was laid on top of them, how that kind of developed, and the All-Ireland League kind of slightly suffered, in fairness.
Yeah.
How it's also one of the paths into professionalism for players, but it's not really utilised. And then I just kept asking him questions about how it is in Wales. And seeing as the British and Irish Cup was really the one that the point that really kicked it off, we might as well bring in anything that you know about equivalent English rugby or the RFU Championship, because we're talking about two semi-pro leagues that would have played against each other at times, or in the case of Wales, in the British and Irish Cup, and the Rugby Championship or RFU Championship is fully professional. So and I think just any questions, I think it's really just pure curiosity at that point, where we end up.
So I'm not a very good or big aficionado on the British and Irish Cup. I've literally just looked at it now. Worcester have won it by the looks of things. I'm looking at the final standings and everything, but it does say something about English rugby that I feel like I'm fairly involved in rugby in this level.
Yeah.
But I don't know of it very well, and the idea that Bristol would get beaten by Doncaster, I can't see that being a legitimate, Bristol can't have fielded a full side.
A full team.
Yeah,
this is a good discussion point. Obviously this is your perspective on it, and this is, I suppose, the average English rugby fan's perspective on it. What the fuck is the British and Irish Cup, and why is it relevant?
Yeah.
And, that's something we can just end up talking about, because the thing I could say there, I don't know English rugby, I don't know the RFU that well, RFU Championship that well, but to me it does make sense that it would be a second string team, because these guys have a full professional league that they have to play in.
There's a lot of money in it, yeah.
Whereas the Irish second string sides don't. And this is why I think it's more relevant for us, because we look at it as an avenue to develop our players for our provinces. We have, beside our academy, a path to develop players and get them game time and get them out there against at least decent Welsh sides who are in the same boat. Scotland kind of was, but I don't know what the fuck they're doing the moment they pulled out. And then English sides, we just don't know. 2 years in a row, Leinster just kind of swatted everybody aside, and then they lost against Worcester, so I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah.
Who did we lose against?
You lost against Worcester last year.
That was Worcester, yeah.
Yeah, 15-13. But Worcester had a really good side. They have Pennell, and they've ended up getting promotion, and they've ended up winning the whole thing. So I'm not, Worcester are a good team.
That's what I mean, kind of like your curiosity will lead to some discussions. So I suppose we might as well begin. And, if you have any, if you guys have any talking points before we start, or issues. Was any of this televised? Is my next question, because I can't remember ever seeing the chance on TV to watch this. Ireland,
no,
I
don't think I think it should be televised, at least in the knockout stages. Because I know a few years ago, I think Ponty were playing Leinster in the semi-final, and they packed the stadium, and they had people listening to it on the radio, and it would have been such a good TV opportunity to show that kind of thing, because it was a huge game.
I can see
for both teams, and it would have been brilliant to have that on TV, but no one really had the foresight to sort of show it.
Let me just check that up. British and Irish.
It was 22-all Ponty versus Leinster, 2014, Sardis Road, and if I'm honest, but just by the looks of it, it's 22-all. That's an exciting game of rugby. That's not like a 10-12 dirge of rubbish. That's a good game of rugby. You put that on TV, people are interested.
Yeah, no, it wasn't televised. Very strange. Maybe it was televised by the IRFU, on the website or something like that. But
It's not
yeah,
advertised as well as it could be, apparently.
but I mean, think about it from this perspective. You have national A sides, and obviously the structure. This is why I was interested in this. The structure of Irish rugby is just that we have the four professional clubs, and then we have the four professional A sides where you get these 20 to 22-year-olds or even 19 to 22-year-olds playing, and a couple of decent players in there as well. I think we scared the shit out of some club because it might have been some English club because we fucked Sean O'Brien in at one point. Because he needed game time. And imagine going up against him.
Was that
Now, obviously,
Rotherham? It looks like Rotherham got destroyed.
You might have been right. It would have been around Six Nations time.
Possible. Anyway.
So I mean, so that's our system. It's very geared towards, we're feeding players in at certain levels, and they're going to go up and rise to the ranks, and they get game time. Leinster A, they're going to get game time at Leinster. They're going to be in the academy at the same time. And they've got very little to do with the random clubs that are dotted around the country. Whereas the RFU Championship, it's already fully professional, and those teams have obviously zero to do with the Premiership teams. They're obviously different clubs.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's just curious from my perspective. The British and Irish Cup we see as a method to improve Leinster's senior team, as well as eventually discover who are good future players and feed them into the Irish system and eventually the Irish team. So the goals are completely different there, as you can see, and that's just why I was kind of curious in the call, or it was a chat that we had a couple of weeks back, and yeah.
I think it's quite interesting because I think, well, by the looks of it, that the championship sides are using it as a development, but they've still, as Worcester have won it, they're still putting out a strong side once they get to a position where they can win it. I mean, I don't want to say Worcester. I don't want to say Worcester played a weak team the whole time because it's probably not true. But I reckon they have at some point fielded a weaker side.
Yeah. So I don't know how do we want to start this, or how do we want to do this, because.
Well, I think just keep talking as we are. I think it's quite interesting.
Oh, are you already recording this?
I've hit record, so yeah.
Oh, excellent! I thought I thought we were just having a chat.
I think it's more fun. I think it's more fun to hear us just having a chat.
Yeah, I mean, we can always do some form of an intro then later.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing.
Just how it came up was you paying attention to me and Georgie's having a chat. Why the fuck aren't you recording this?
But yeah, no, I'm looking at the history of it quite now because I mean, this is a fairly new revelation. I mean, I'd always known it's been happening in the back of my mind, but the fact that the championship sides are committing to this and making this a thing where they're competing against Wales and Ireland at the moment, it's quite interesting to me. I quite enjoy it, and I do find it weird that Wales, despite in football being integrated, have ended up going with Ireland instead. That in rugby terms, I know that it's always been separate and a bit different from football. It's always been run a bit differently. But the fact that they've had to almost been forced across when previously, historically, Cardiff and Bath and Gloucester and Bristol have always played each other in a big kind of round robin, and Ponty, they've all kind of played in that big area. And now Wales have decided, even though that's a big rugby centre, they've ended up going and playing Ireland and Scotland and not really playing these local rivals that they used to play back in the history times. So, I don't know, it confuses me a little bit.
I just think that's partly down to the way the English system is set up, with it being... I mean, it's very different to the way that the Welsh and Irish systems are, and the English system is a lot more like the Football League. Whereas with the Irish and Welsh, you have the Pro 12, and that's completely ring fenced, and then you have the domestic stuff completely separate to that in a way, apart from being like sort of the feeder sort of system. So I think that's partly due to it, which is unfortunate because you do want to have the sort of the Cardiff Bristol derbies and things like that.
Yeah, because I mean historically that is an epic derby. I mean that used to be the one for the ages, or Bath versus Cardiff, and those old school rivalries in that West Country kind of versus Wales historically have been epic. So it is a bit sad that that's lessened off, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I suppose, being Irish, I wasn't too aware of. I remember seeing a couple of posts from Welsh posters about these derbies there, and I wasn't aware of it. And I remember trying to find out more about it online, and I wasn't able to, and it kind of fell out of my mind.
It is a very old history, but it's one that it does predate, I suppose, the professional era when it was just the closest club. I mean, that's what happened. You end up playing who's around you.
I mean, that's kind of, I suppose, the sad fact of professionalism in rugby. And I suppose, again, you know, I'm obviously biased, and I've obviously got an Irish perspective here. But looking at how we went professional, how we simply just, the All-Ireland League was, you know, a lot more popular than the first couple of years of the professional provinces. You know, this was rugby in Ireland, just like the Welsh Premiership was rugby in Wales. You know, thousands of people would have gone to some certain games or derbies or knockouts or the final. Now it's kind of somewhat died out. I don't want to say died out. That's a bit harsh. But you know, it's more geared towards. Yeah, it's more geared towards. I suppose the diehard rugby fan, and families of players and friends of players and so on like that. But or people who are members of those clubs. And you know, we laid down the professional structure on top of that. The 4 provinces, every club within those geographical areas would then feed, apart from 1 or 2 exceptions, would feed then into the provinces. So
you've said that they all feed in. Is it a case? So when we're talking, I'm going to bring it back to a weird analogy. When we talk about feeding, are we talking about the sort of like everyone goes to this school, so they all go to the same college? Is it that kind of feeding? Is it where you play for a specific side within that lower structure and you end up playing for Leinster? Do they have that direct correlation, or is it more just like you get noticed and you might get picked up by one of the 4?
You'd most likely, well, I'd say it's sort of a mix, more heavily towards the second. So I mean, look, you know, it's nice to say that they're, you know, feeding into the provinces, but in reality, nobody really cares. We've got, you know, you can't really just say, oh, you grew up in this part of Ireland and you went to that school, so you must go there. That's not how it is. I mean, we've got people moving between provinces all the time, being picked up by different provinces. But essentially, you know, it's just easier because you've got the links. If you go to a certain school and then you end up playing with a certain club and you get noticed and picked by Leinster, it's just easy because the connections are there. You know, you're from Dublin. You might have met people from Leinster rugby while you're playing at a certain club or a certain school. That's just how it is. And if you played in the Leinster Senior Cup, you know, and you ended up in a semi-final or a final, your name's going to be noticed as well. So it's just easier for that sense. But what I mean is, you know, as well, you do have semi-pro clubs from the All-Ireland League.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's not the same situation of you played here, you must get a contract there before moving on. Now, it is a bit of a strange situation that they're only allowed, the 2 top groups in the All-Ireland League, they're only allowed 2 professional players, and I think it's the same in Wales or similar. No?
I don't.
I'm not sure with that because of for example, like you got teams like Ponty, and that's basically, if you look at the players they've got, it's virtually the Cardiff Blues 18. They the same with if you go to the Ospreys region, you got Swansea, not Swansea, sorry, Neath. With Dragons, you got Crosskeys. They're the sort of main. Sort of feeder clubs, I suppose, that tend to have quite a few of the younger players that are actually contracted with the region.
So in that case, it does act as a direct correlation. Then, so that is an actual you play for Neath, you will end up playing for the Ospreys, or you may end up playing for the Ospreys.
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example from Ireland. If you look at any Ireland team sheet, you're going to see the local clubs listed, not Leinster, Munster, Ulster, Connacht. Okay. And these all directly correlate to their professional club. So every Leinster player is going to be contracted, or they're going to have who's contracted. Leinster. They're going to have their AIL team. Beside that, it's going to be in Leinster. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's just not allowed that you can, let's say, be part of a club in Munster and be contracted to Leinster. I think these are, they're I suppose mini unions or subsidiaries of the IRFU anyway in Ireland. And so if you're playing with a local club in Leinster,
in that region.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. So I'm going to bring it back to Wales because Cheese was going quite well on something. So for the Welsh subdivision, I know nothing about the division below Ospreys, Dragons, the four major regions. I don't know anything about them. I mean, what's that? I mean, I've seen the name Ponty here, and I can't actually see many other Welsh teams. Llanelli. So we've got a couple in Cross Keys apparently, but I don't know much about them. Like there isn't much talk about them in England, at least.
No, I mean a lot of them are very historic clubs, which I think has led to the kind of the tension between the unions and the clubs, because I mean you got clubs, bring back to Ponty again, or Neath, which were huge, absolutely huge clubs in the 70s, and now they're barely half feeder clubs. I mean, Swansea were relegated to the Welsh Championship last season, which was huge news in Wales, because it was just...
Yeah, they're not in the cup anymore, are they? I can see the last 2 years they haven't competed. So I'm imagining... Well, and Newport have had a little blip, and Neath have dropped off in the last 2 years. I am seeing, I mean, just from a casual glance at who is not competing anymore, I am seeing a big drop-off in the names, and it's only Ponty and... I don't know how to say it, Aberavon?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, those are the only two, and Cross Keys, but they joined late. Those three are the only ones that are consistently competing. Everyone else has seemed to have dropped off. Even Llanelli last year haven't competed.
Ponty's the only one that's been there the whole time.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of Welsh drop-off there, whereas you've got the English clubs that are all competing all the way through almost, apart from Exeter because of promotion, and London Welsh. And the Irish clubs are all competing because why the hell not? They've got their A teams and they can fill it in. Yep. So it's only the Welsh that are really going up and down and really getting a bit confused with their union about what to do. And I think that, well, I don't know, maybe it's a bit of unstable infighting or something.
I mean, yeah, I think that was kind of partly the reason for having these regional select 15s that they're adding rather than the clubs.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like historically, the last couple of years, it's only really been Ponty that have got anywhere for the Welsh teams in the British and Irish Cup.
Yep.
So having these, guaranteed 4 regions in, I mean, it's better Welsh representation, but for the clubs, it's a step down for them, which is really not good for them. But I mean, with this new Premiership system that's coming in now, I think next year they're upping it to 16 teams, and it's kind of giving it a more professional look with the being divided into 8 or two divisions of 8 in the second half of the season, and there's another club as well that's popped over the last few years, RGC 1404, and they started to act a bit like the 5th Welsh region in a way in North Wales, and they started to take some players that would have usually gone to the Scarlets. They started to take them in, and they've started to do well, and whether they'll be included in the automatic promotion now in the next year to the Premiership, we'll see. But yeah, there's starting to get a little bit more professional look now to the Welsh domestic game.
I'm genuinely excited for Wales, to be honest, because I think the moment that they get their act together and start to actually mobilise these historic clubs, because I mean, if you mobilise these historic clubs, they have a lot of pull and a lot of history and a lot of firepower. You will start producing crazy talent. I don't understand how they can have this standoff between just dead. I feel like they're not getting the respect that they feel they deserve. Whether or not they actually deserve the respect, it doesn't matter. They need to be given a little bit just to say, produce the players for this national side.
Yeah, it's.
Do you know what I mean? I can't. Go on.
Yeah.
They have sort of mentioned in the past week that they sort of feel forgotten about and neglected, and there's been a lack of funding in that part of the game. And
well, they literally just need to televise it. I don't understand. Televise it, slap some slap some advertising on their chest, and watch the viewers come. Because to be honest, if you're watching Ponty versus Newport, or you're watching I don't know, you're watching some local derbies or something going on, it's more interesting. Even if it's just on TV, there's more money coming in, and there's more people sitting on seats.
I kind of assume that whoever runs the British and Irish Cup is going to be the unions. So in other words, IRFU, WRU, and the RFU. Obviously, Scotland has pulled out, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure they still have a seat at the table, or at least a voice to be heard. So I'm really confused about why they've never even tried to market this in any way. And I mean, Ireland has always treated it like, again, similar to yourself, I only really found out about this cup existing maybe 2 years ago, and I really only cared about it maybe a year ago. And the reason for that is Leinster won it 2 years in a row. That's why it suddenly flashed up on my radar. Why I cared. Like, oh wow, you get to see up and coming guys, see what they're like, future talent, and apparently we're good at this. Up until that point, was it? I think just English teams were winning it. But I still don't see why you wouldn't televise some matches, or at least the knockout rounds.
On the Welsh channel, on 34C, is it?
S4C, I think.
S4C,
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it should definitely be on that. I have no clue how that hasn't picked it up and said, look at our boys play. Even if it just does the select Wales games, it doesn't make any sense why they haven't picked it up, because there's huge interest, I imagine.
Funnily enough, I mean, just touching back on the issue you said about clubs feeling they're not getting the respect they deserve, what you have to also realise is the start of the Celtic League. The clubs that you see listed here, how many was it? 6 or 8 of them used to play in the Celtic League. And if you go back to 2000, 2001, 2002, I think, you'll see about 8 Welsh teams, and you would have seen Llanelli or Newport or Pontypridd, Swansea. It was 2003 or 2004, I think, that the regions first came about, and so slowly you see that these clubs have been pushed out of the picture. And it was, I just feel from the perspective of the WRU. Now, again, obviously, I'm biased because I'm coming from this perspective of this overbearing, controlling rugby union,
Irish,
which literally has just, from day one we're going professional. Next day, you had the 4 provinces, and all the clubs were suddenly relegated to this back room, and it did piss off quite a lot of people. But it was done swift. It was done ruthlessly, and that's just how it was, and it was explained to them in a way as well. There were prestigious clubs there as well. But in the Welsh way of doing it was, I think, a lot of them, maybe they had more power. I'm not too sure. I'm obviously not Welsh, so I don't really know. Definitely maybe more respect and admiration amongst Welsh fans. I think they just had more firepower, and it wasn't easy for them to turn around and say, here, get into the back room there, and we'll put down these regions. And slowly they were just pushed out of the picture from top-tier rugby. Now, back then, I'd say comparing the year 2000, 2001 Celtic League to the Pro 12 today, or the European Cup today, is completely different. It's like comparing the British and Irish Cup to top-tier rugby. Yeah. And now you see here it's happening to them again. And so maybe from that perspective is the reason why they're a bit, unhappy in a way. I don't know, maybe Chad Cheese, is that a plausible analysis or outside view?
That's pretty much it, really. I mean, the British and Irish Cup was... I mean, I can't really speak for other clubs because they didn't really get anywhere in it, but for Ponty, it was a big part of the season. Like I mentioned, when they played Leinster recently in the semi-final at Sardis Road, they filled the stadium. It was a huge atmosphere. It was... and now they have that taken away from them without really any choice in the matter, and it just sort of feels like history is repeating itself for them. So I can understand where they're coming from, but there also needs to be a way of moving forward, and I think some sort of compromise, which I suppose is what they tried to do with the whole regional Select 15 thing they're trying, but it's not really good enough for them, I suppose.
Well, the thing is that this is being treated, as Ireland have said, as an A-team game for them, and as a historic proper team fixture in Wales, and then just a championship fixture in England. The problem is that the Welsh don't have, officially, that second division is their top division. Who won that top division in Wales last year? Was it Ponty, or was or do we not know?
Yeah, I think Ponty have won it for the past few years now. They've been sort of the
team to
It's
beat, I
weird. They've been
suppose.
in a sort of Bristol position where they're sort of too good for the league they're in,
Okay.
but not really good enough for anything above it.
Because that's the thing. Because Ponty, I mean, Ponty have nothing to aim for. They're just going to win, right? Now, Worcester, for example, here they won the British Irish Cup and they've also won the league, so they've managed to get promotion as well. They have an incentive to get even better than they already are.
Yeah.
The Leinster A team and the Munster A team have an incentive to get better than they already are because they can play for the main team. Whereas the Pontyprids and the Welsh thing, there's no way up. There is no incentive. I mean, they want to play and they want to win. They want victories. Everybody wants victories, but the players individually have no way of getting better. And the clubs are literally sitting there going, "There's no way we can increase revenue. There's no way we can increase anything. So why should we put money into this? There is no way of getting better." And so I think that's a huge flaw in the Welsh system, where they just they need a way of making money, or no one's ever going to see it as a viable option.
This is why I'm looking forward to this shiny new league. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tell us about
the
it.
shiny new league that they're bringing in now next year. 4 extra teams. There's been a few teams now in the championship which are improving. You got guys like Merthyr, which have got this new millionaire owner. RGC, like I mentioned before. There's Bargoed, who won the championship, I think, this last season, but weren't allowed promotion, so they'll be one of the ones considered for automatic promotion. So yeah, there's competition is starting to sort of pick up now. I mean, the Swaylet Cup, Bridgend beat Ponty in the Swaylet Cup final in Millennium Stadium a couple of months ago.
Okay.
So that was a big thing. And yeah, so there's competition starting to pick up a bit now, rather than just Ponty dominating everything like they have for the past few years. I think it was I think it was Ebbw Vale got promoted this season and ended up finishing somewhere top of the table, just coming up in their first time in the Premiership.
And that's because when they were building these sides to get better, they had a reason, because they were going up. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine all the mid-table teams are just going, well, what's the point of pushing for top? There is no money at the top. There is nothing. So why not just stay mid-table and just kind of be a feeder club? There's no incentive. I love the idea that a rugby team like Exeter, like Bristol, I mean, Bristol have dropped a bit, like the Pirates, like Esher, even Esher, all the way down, like sitting bottom of the table of the Championship, or even Div 1 now. They have an incentive to get better. And the Welsh teams are just sitting there going, there's no incentive. For a mid-table side who believes that they can never compete, there's very little incentive.
I think they'll be splitting up the Premiership now as well.
Yeah.
So the 16 teams, it'll be split into 2 divisions of 8 in the second half. So it means there's competition in the first half of the season to get into that top 8.
Yeah.
Within that top 8, then there's like a little closed-off competition then to get into the playoffs.
Do you have a relegation system?
Yeah,
Or
there's
is this
relegation
isolated?
from the
Okay.
Championship to the Premiership and things like that. And then if you finish, say, in the bottom half of the table one season, you have that fight then to finish in the top 8 then for the next season. I think that it's really good the way it's done to sort of manufacture some good competition.
Okay. No, I'm excited to see this manifest, to be fair, and see how it all comes about. If this hadn't existed, the more I'm hearing about it, the more I would I mean, personally, if they could collude, the RFU and the Welsh Rugby Union, it wouldn't be in the RFU's best interests. But if I was Ponty, I'd be saying, well, we've won every year, stick us in your championship, in your English championship, because it's the equivalent. I'm drawing equivalencies with football. And let us compete and see if we can compete. If we can compete, then maybe we just blend with you guys. Like, it's all very well with the Pro 12, let the regions do what they want, but we want this competition and this genuine thing, and bring it back to a more historical context. But I think that's a bit of dream world, really. I don't think that would ever happen.
I mean, that's funny because I've never actually looked at it from that perspective before, the way you've just explained it. Now suddenly it makes sense to me why a lot of Welsh people were saying let's go in, I suppose, in bed with the RFU.
Yeah.
That always confused me because I looked at it and said, look, the All Ireland League has a clearly defined structure of 5 different levels and 10 teams each. There's 52 teams and a playoff then for the top division, and there's an incentive. It's semi-professional. You want to stay in 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
But you're never going to ever play in a professional setup against another professional team from a different country. That's not going to happen. And then after that, you're hoping that you're either going to get noticed or you're going to be that one professional or 2 professional players. Maybe you'll end up playing for Leinster, Munster, Ulster, and then your career will take off from there. And that's an individual player's perspective. But I never really understood, and I was kind of always asking myself why are these teams in Wales so upset? Obviously, again, this is just my outside perspective from a very biased standpoint.
Yeah.
I never understood it, and it always confused me. And always, why do you want to go into bed with England? What's they have to offer? They're professional teams, fully professional. They're all about money. They're all about career. They're all about this competition. Whereas I just saw the Welsh teams more like comparable to the AIL in Ireland, and maybe a bit more prestigious, maybe than our teams. I'm not saying that our teams aren't. I mean, you've got Lansdowne FC, you've got UC Trinity, you've got Cork Constitution, Belfast, Harlequins. These are all well-known names in those leagues.
I'm just looking at the Premier Division wins by a club in Wales, and the last, 2012 to 2015 is Ponty. They've won every single year, and before that it was Neath. Neath won from 2005 to 2010, and they in 2009 Cardiff won. But the thing is that it does look to be a pattern. So one team dominates for an extended period of time, and then maybe it shifts a little bit, and then another team dominates for an extended period of time. There's very little to and fro that we're starting to get in the Premiership, that we're starting to get in the Pro 12. There seems to be more, this is a dominance, and then it sticks around for a bit, and then there's another period of dominance. So
that's quite funny as well. In Ireland, just to give you an example, the All Ireland League, so it's existed since 1990, so we're looking at 25 years here, and it has been dominated by Munster, and you have to see there's a slight difference there, obviously, with Rugby Ireland. 1990 to 2000, it's been a Munster club each year. Cork Constitution, Garryowen, Young Munster, Shannon, so on and so forth. First non-Munster club to win was a Leinster club, St Mary's College, in 2000. Then from there is one Ulster club, 2 Ulster clubs, and then all the rest are Munster again up until 2011. Since then, it's all been Leinster clubs. So it's quite interesting to see that there has been a shift, and there has been a couple of complaints that, look, there's obviously more money, more jobs in this part of the country, and even you see these non-professional players are just moving up to Dublin, and they're going to, because you're going to be talking to your coach, you're going to be talking to your teammates, and you're going to be saying, look, I can't find a job, or I'm having trouble with employment, or there's a better opportunity in Leinster. They'll end up moving, or ends up taking their talent over there. And I heard that in a podcast, I think, some point last year, and it was a very valid point. And then as well, it's more attractive for the semi-professionals or the professionals who get those 1 or 2 spots on teams to move to a place like Leinster. But
well, big cities attract talent. I mean, that's always been true. I think that's part of the reason that London has quite a few successful clubs. I think that's part of the reason that Bristol has so many in quite a condensed area. Bristol and Bath and all this area over here I'm going to bang on about. I think the main thing that's surprising is the fact that Leicester and Northampton, so 2 fairly close teams up north, not necessarily the most wealthy areas. They're not poor by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not crazy wealthy, but they have a really strong rugby contingent and are very, very proud of it. But then again, you look at Newcastle; they've got a strong rugby contingent as well. With these big cities, it's very rarely a rural area such as Devon or Exeter or Cornwall with the Pirates that have this great pull. It's only when they're in an isolated area. So, I mean, the Pirates and Devon are a little bit isolated. They're a little bit, in the corner of England. They manage to draw from a big pool of players rather than in a condensed city area that just draws all the talent in. That's just a socio-economic thing, isn't it, really?
Out of curiosity, I mean, I'm looking at the RFU Championship page, and of course, I know very little about most of these teams, apart from maybe London Welsh, which we all, I suppose, had a bit of an experience of in the last season. Bristol, I suppose, a bit about the Pirates, but apart from that, okay, and the couple of teams that I would have known that Leinster would have played against. But I'm kind of intrigued. I'm looking at it. I'm just see, where I would consider rugby league territory, we have 3 teams up north.
Yeah.
Rotherham, Doncaster, and Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just kind of curious: is there more rugby union up there than I actually perceive, or is that just simply because maybe the RFU Championship doesn't have as high a hurdle to get into as I thought it might have had?
I mean, I don't really know enough about the rugby union north of. I mean, that's the problem with my point of view. I don't really know the Northern England rugby. I mean, my one main blind spot is Sale as a rugby club. I know nothing about them really. I just don't. It's weird for me because Leicester and Northampton. I watched one of my favourite games. I can't remember. It's the 2014 semi-final of the Aviva Premiership. And that was crazy to me to watch. I've always known the derbies in London. I've always known the derbies in the West Country. But to watch these two teams that I've always perceived them as rivals. They've always been massive rivals. But watching them at the height of their game, just going at it toe for toe, and watching this, I had never really thought of it before. And suddenly it brought to me that the rugby league passion that exists up there also exists in Union. I mean, the divide and the hatred that goes on there it exists, and it's really interesting to see it transfer into Union so easily. Really, and I don't know if it's very different from the hatred of league. I would need someone who lives there and knows it. Really.
Yeah, good point. So, I suppose going back to the point of. we brought it up, I think it was in the first podcast, or I don't know if it was just you, me, and Wallopy Joe having a chat, and up came the British and Irish Cup for the first time. And I don't know. I've said it then, and I'm going to raise it again. One of the things we've seen in the last year, especially around the Welsh Civil War and the issue over the European Cup, was will there ever be British and Irish Cup for first 15 senior team for all of the Irish provinces, the Welsh regions, the 2 Scottish clubs, and then the Aviva Premiership teams. So you're at 22 teams there roughly, because and one of the things that also really spurred that discussion, not just the Welsh Civil War, was the also recent discussion of ring fencing the Aviva Premiership. I mean, why would you ring fence it? Secondary reason.
I'm still getting to the point where I'm against it. I've actually talked myself just in this one discussion now. I'm now dead against it because I'm just looking at the way the Welsh have done it, and I think the problem is that you have these massive teams in the championship, and to suddenly tell them, no, you're not allowed to have any dreams of getting any higher, especially when quite a lot of them are aspirational clubs. I mean, when do you cut it out? You cut it out with Richmond. They've got a huge history of wanting to go. You've got Blackheath. You've got some of these other clubs that are just in the championship. That want to get better. They're always fighting year after year to get better. And Bedford. Sorry, I forgot about Bedford as well. Just these big teams that are very well known. I don't think the RFU can turn around and go, no, you will never reach the top flight of English rugby.
Yeah, I mean, that was always strange to me that conversation even came up. Why would you be able to? Why should you turn around and say, no, this is how far you can go and no further? Why, when this discussion came up several times, first off in the Rugby Union subreddit, as well as in, I suppose, opinion pieces and other podcasts, why was Bristol always the one club to be considered the cut-off point? I mean, that's a bit unfair on anybody else that, first off, has actually beaten them and gotten up. We've had Western, we've had somehow London Welsh do it.
Well, I'm looking at it now. Bedford have played in the RFU Championship since its very beginning in 1987. They've been there since the get-go. Yeah. Saracens started in the Championship. We got Roslyn Park, who are now in League One. We've got the Welsh and Scottish, and they're all playing in there still. And there's teams that have gone up and down. It's not like it's a fluid thing, but they've got so much history. It's just it would really bug me if they ring fenced it. It would really annoy me.
It's a bit strange. I didn't realise 2005, 2006 the Quins were there. In '89, Northampton.
Yeah.
93, Sale. Northampton and Saracens were still there in '95. It's quite interesting to see that. I mean, obviously, this is a competition with its own history, with its own tradition. I think it's quite interesting to see. It feels a bit weird to ring fence it, but on the other hand, it wasn't shut down as you would have expected by the CEO of Leinster when he was asked. But what he did say was, essentially, everything that happens in the UK and Ireland in terms of rugby, whether it's the Aviva Premiership, whether it's European rugby or Pro 12, is dictated by the broadcasters.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They want a bankable option, and to say we have these ring fence clubs, this is where you will build your camera stands and everything, this is where you'll do everything, this is how we will advertise it, the easier it is for the broadcasters. Sorry, give me a second.
Exactly.
You two chat.
Go ahead. So, Chad, geez, you're a bit quiet there.
I was just keeping quiet on the whole English thing.
It feels true. I mean, I have no idea about English rugby as well. I'm just talking and getting a bit curious.
Yeah. I was thinking earlier about that point that Sav was making about the centralisation of rugby clubs and how they're more popular in densely populated areas.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the what I mentioned earlier, RGC 1404.
Yeah.
It popped up. I think they're a fairly new club, or at least they've come to prominence in the last couple of years as sort of like a mini Welsh region, and they've done well because they've targeted basically the Scarlets have traditionally held North Wales as part of their region, whereas the other three regions are fairly local in their catchment areas. I suppose Scarlets have had the entire of North and West Wales to themselves. Whereas RGC have now come in and they've started to sort of poach that North Welsh area.
Isn't it quite a sparsely populated area? I mean, I don't know it too well.
It is. Yeah. It's incredibly. I mean, apart from I suppose the sort of eastern side where you've got things like Wrexham and Rhyl and Bangor and sort of stuff, places like that, I suppose a bit more city-like. Most of that area is rural, with a couple of villages and things like that. So it's not really a huge area. So I think they've done well to sort of they set up themselves in Colwyn Bay, and they sort of made a mini region for themselves there, a semi-professional mini region where they've just taken all these best players out of North Wales and climbed the ranks of the Welsh system.
I'm kind of curious, do you think there will be, so obviously there's always been talk about a fifth Welsh region coming back, or, it was a bit unfair about what happened to the Celtic Warriors. Do you think there's any possibility of that turning into a new region? Or
if the WIU had the funding, I mean, it would be difficult to sort of figure out with the Pro 12 and things like that. That's the only problem.
I mean, I'd say not really. Not really. I'd say you just throw them in. Of course, 13 is an ugly number, but it's still. But I'm just kind of curious. Aren't the regions private anyway?
They get funding from the WIU. I mean, that's the whole thing with the Celtic Warriors. They just couldn't afford to keep them there, really. Which is why they had to cut down, like you mentioned earlier, where the early years of the Celtic League, there would be 8 or so Welsh clubs in there. The WIU just couldn't afford to fund that many, which is why they came up with the regions in the first place. So I mean, if they had the money, I think RGC would definitely be the so-called fifth region.
Yeah. I mean, that always confused me about, why were the Celtic Warriors there? First off, why were all 5 regions down in the south? Why was there no coverage up in the north? And why specifically the Celtic Warriors were the one that were chosen to be down? Those are the three questions that have always confused me about Welsh rugby, to be honest.
So rugby's generally more popular in the southeast, southwest.
Yeah.
In the sort of old sort of mining towns, I suppose, and things like that, where it was more popular. Whereas in North Wales, where it's almost a completely different country in some ways, it's football's a lot more popular up there.
Okay, I would have thought it was just the northeast, so kind of bordering there towards Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but I mean that's mainly where the population of
That's
North
where
Wales
everyone
is.
lives in North
Yeah,
Wales. They don't live in Snowdonia.
yeah.
They live in bloody Wrexham, don't they?
This makes sense. This makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
learning something new.
there's really not a lot of people in North Wales. I mean, the majority people live in the four regions, sort of main areas where you got Llanelli and Swansea and Cardiff and Newport. Those are the main areas.
There's condensed rivalries there, and I love that. But
But I think the addition of a North Welsh region would be fantastic, because I mean some of the best players Wales have come from up there. I mean
'Cause all
George
they've done
North came through the Anglesey.
straight out of England.
Fifth
Well.
Welsh region.
Yeah, feeder club. I think I agree with you. I just struggle. Where would they put the stadium for a start, and then how would they draw in the crowds to one location? Because it's quite a big area and quite a sparsely populated area. Would they pander to the well populated, or would they pander to the scenic farmers? I think they're going to have to go population, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean at the moment RGC are based in Colwyn Bay and Park areas. You might have seen some of the under-20s games played there for Wales, or I think in the November tests, teams like USA and Tonga and stuff play there as sort of a neutral ground.
Yep.
It's not the biggest stadium in the world. I only think it seats 3,000-4,000. But there's room for expansion there. It's a new stadium, and it's really drawn in the crowd recently. I think they filled it for one of the sort of tier 2 tests they had there in the last year. They filled it for Wales training camp that went up there last week, and they get good crowds there for RGC as well, because it's sort of their own little mini region. So I think if they marketed it well, they could get a decent crowd there if it turned professional.
It is fair. I mean, it's not crazy isolated. Don't get me wrong, but it is fairly out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looking at it. I mean, I'm just looking at it on the map right now, and it is fairly out there. I mean, it's not Anglesey, don't get me wrong, but it's
But
out
from
there.
what I understood, just travel times in Wales are an issue. So to get from north to south is it actually takes.
It's a bit of a struggle. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember having to drive to Snowdonia because I wanted to climb Snowdon, and the best way to do it really was almost to drive up England and then turn left and try and get across. So actually driving through Wales is a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, the main road from the south to north is mostly a country road.
Yeah.
Which is it makes things difficult. But I mean, within North Wales itself, I mean where you got the south that's fairly connected and the north that's fairly connected. The issue with the travel is between the two. So I think if you did have a region in the north, travel within that area would be fine.
Well, it's the thing with, how do I want to put it? So the reason for creating a region in the north would be A, you're giving the respect to North Wales, you are creating players, but B, it's you now need to make more teams up here. You need to make feeder clubs of your own that are going to contribute to overall Wales standards. So the thing is, if you build a club in North Wales, you then need to go, well, where else could they build little clubs? I'm not saying another big one, but would they build one in Bangor? Would they build one, I don't know, where else would they build clubs that would feed into the major region up there?
Well, I mean, I think they're getting enough already with what they got as a little semi-pro club. They're attracting some players, and they're even becoming sort of the players they're producing are good enough now. One's been signed by the Cardiff Blues.
Good.
So they're producing good players from these little clubs, and they've got a good coaching team as well. I think Rupert Moon, the ex-Wales international, is part of the coaching staff up there now. They've got some good funding in. They have a great badge. It looks awesome. and they're
good.
doing pretty well for
If
themselves.
it exists, then I'm all for it. I'm excited, and I think they can only move on and get positive results out of it. Then, if they've already got the base covered.
I think they might sort of. They probably end up poaching a bit from the valleys as well, because I mean this is saturated down there at the moment.
You reckon they'll poach from the valleys? That's a bit of a isn't that a bit of a track or?
Like, I don't know, I've just had a quick look on Wikipedia there, so just list of Welsh rugby clubs by division.
Okay.
And the top two divisions, the Premier Division and the Championship, so the second division essentially, out of all of the clubs, there's literally only one in Northern Wales, and that's RGC. And I didn't realise that until now. Basically, I thought you were just saying there's another club up there, and that club is growing. It's got a good owner, it's got a good team, and they're getting good players. I honestly did not realise that is literally the only club up there in the top two divisions.
It's a little bit worrying, but I mean, if it's growing, it's growing. That's the key.
It's easier to grow when the competition is
But that's what I'm saying. If you're going to create a region, it's hard to do it without a historical team, because as Charchis has already said, he thinks that they will be able to get enough players. But if you, as you, I'm looking at a picture of it now, and they are on their own with nobody around them whatsoever. There are no feeder teams, as it were, as I can see.
I mean, I'd like to put, I suppose, a comparison out there for, again, using an Irish comparison of a non-rugby playing area is the west of Ireland. That's dominated by Gaelic football and hurling. And they were, there was an idea by the IRFU to actually close down Connacht. I think it was around 2005, 2006, and literally just get rid of it and incorporate it into Leinster. I think was the idea at the time, and
turns out to be a bad idea.
Petitioned against it, and slowly but surely, they brought in some good coaches. They put in some amount of non-Irish qualified players that you can have. So obviously, and the way it works at the moment is Ulster, Leinster, Munster only allowed, I think, 3 non-Irish qualified players. So we can bring in Isnt and a couple of others, and then we're allowed 1 project player, which is Ireland, I suppose, screwing with the system. Bring in a player, get them to play with you for 3 years, and make them Irish qualified, so you're allowed 1 of them. So it's a 3+1 system, but the only one that's exempt from all of this is Connacht, so they can bring as many as they want. I don't think there is any restriction on it. And they brought in, obviously, a very good coach in Pat Lam. And you can see at the moment, from an outsider's perspective, you wouldn't know it, but rugby is becoming more and more popular in the west of Ireland. You can see it here inside Ireland how that's happening. They're getting a bit more success. They're that plucky up and coming team. Everybody chooses them as their second team in Ireland. They want to see them do well. And that's essentially creating a province, a professional province, with a geographic area out of an area that has never been interested in rugby until 5 to 8 years ago.
Well, they forced it, and they forced the issue, and it's working. And
out of that, as you said earlier, rugby clubs are springing up.
You need to, if you're going to give them the region, you have to tell them these clubs have to exist. That you have to create these clubs, and obviously it's working in Connacht.
I suppose, Charchis, just out of curiosity, what sort of caretaker role or capacity do the regions have in Wales?
What do you mean by caretaker there?
So,
do they have a role in looking after the little clubs? For example, Harlequins in London has ties with my club in particular, Chipstead, and certain other clubs in the local area. I mean, we're only a small club, but they have ties with us, so they almost support us in certain aspects, and we would be their feeder side. We have people in their academy from our under-18s level and things like that. Do they have connections?
The regions offer sort of little training camps and things like that around the various clubs. They'll send players off to go and do little training sessions with clubs and things like that. Coaching staff and all sorts of things. Within the regions, then you have sort of you have Cardiff Blues, North, East, South, and West, which would then make up sort of teams of the little teams and things like that, just to keep people involved, I suppose. And so that's a sort of real role they play with the grassroots there.
Yeah. So I mean, like in Ireland, they really push for local competitions, local clubs, certain funding, certain initiatives. They, as I said earlier, in Ireland, the provinces are essentially mini unions or subsidiaries of the IRFU, and they'll take care of as well the school competitions. So I think there are 800 schools that play rugby, and obviously not every single one of them is going to be in any sort of competition, but let's say they'll take the top 20 to 50 in Leinster, and they'll throw them into different categories and levels, and make sure that they have promotion, relegation, and so on. And they also just try outreach campaigns. So that's kind of what I was wondering. So I can't really say much for how things are going in the West. And sorry, whoops, I think I put myself. How things are in the West of Ireland. But I do know that there is a certain amount of responsibility on each province's shoulders. They get a budget handed down to them, and they have to spend it then accordingly to make sure that the game. So that's kind of what I was wondering, because that could potentially be one of the reasons why Connacht have done so well, if they have a good management.
What you've just reminded me of, and this is going to sound bizarre, is that we were talking earlier about the British and Irish Lions, or not Lions, the Cup, the British and Irish Cup, not the Lions team, but they're not televised as far as we can tell. Whereas the English schools rugby thing may be televised on the red button, maybe on Sky or something, but it's broadcast on YouTube live. So it's almost as if the schools rugby, with all this private school money and the old boy connections, is getting more respect and a little bit more broadcasting time than perhaps the second division and other people are getting. So it's just, I don't know, it's the disparity between the two. The fact that, because you don't see schoolboy football being broadcast, but you do see the championship football. So I think that the championship should be broadcast ahead of schoolboy. Or maybe not ahead, maybe they just need to invest in both. But I just think that it's interesting that one has come before the other.
I mean, that is the case here as well. You'd find schoolboy rugby, especially knockout rugby, on Setanta Sports. So that does exist there. The interesting thing is, we did bring it up. For maybe it's a case that, as we said, Ireland treats it as a way to develop players. Wales isn't sure how to treat it. Scotland pulled out, and English clubs kind of see it as
it's just
in a way
competition.
It's there. It's more game time. We'll field potentially second teams until we get to the knockouts, and if we get there, then we'll take it seriously.
Yeah.
Now, that for them is a way to, again, get more player experience and develop players. But if that became or if that was monetized in any sort of way and became a money stream for clubs as well, I think maybe one of the reasons why they don't want to go down that path is, would that not be a bit unfair for clubs, the RFU clubs, or the champions that are in there? Because Leinster is Leinster.
Yeah.
And if we get money,
you shouldn't
it's
be getting
going into
more
Leinster.
Money. It's true, but
it's going into Leinster. So
in the same respect, this is where you have a problem, because you should be fielding. This is where your system of your overall regions doesn't need to change to adapt, but you should probably be fielding your top Premiership side, not your Pro 12 sides, your top Premiership sides in that competition.
Yeah.
So that that certain lower level can thrive. And I think with the way BT and Sky are competing over rugby right now, and they really are, they're fighting tooth and nail for certain things, and Sky have just lost some broadcasting rights to the Barclays Premiership in football. So if that happened in rugby, so they lose the Premiership, they would have to go, well, we need rugby because people want to watch it. Then they might start broadcasting the lower level stuff. And I think if that happened, that'd be great. But again, it's the broadcasters that we're almost moaning at, to say, stick a camera on it and let people decide whether they want it.
Exactly. And I mean, if there is a push from the broadcasters for this, and again, I don't see a British and Irish Cup happening in the top level. I personally would be against it. But the way I suppose you could view it is this British and Irish Cup being, let's say, a second league, and whichever one then includes the Aviva Premiership, if it happens, which hopefully it wouldn't, because if it does happen, that means there's going to be ring fencing, then that will be considered the top tier. Now, again, the only way this is ever going to happen is if broadcasters really push it. And the only way they'll start to push it is if the current European championship fails. Fortunately, the first year was a shit show.
Yeah.
That was horribly run. And I don't know about you guys, but I haven't heard anything about the 4 other necessary or wanted sponsors. I mean, they want 5. The only one they have is Heineken, and they've forbidden Heineken from getting naming rights because obviously they don't want to name the Heineken Cup again. So I'm kind of curious, like, where's the money? Where are the sponsors? I haven't heard anything. And this is going to kick off now in October again, or November. So,
well, I'm surprised that they can't get sponsors because it's a televised event. Like we've been saying, it's highly sponsorable. Even if they just, I don't really understand how they're failing miserably at this. Surely they have connections, and surely there has to be something that's just fundamentally wrong with how they're running it, because there's no way, like, it's not a toxic league. People watch it because it's interesting. Everybody wants to watch Toulon versus Bath. Okay, it's the battle of the Titans. It's interesting. You've got Leinster and Munster thrown in the mix as well. It's a great tournament, and it's weird. It's weird how they can't sell what is technically the height of European rugby outside the Six Nations.
That's why I'm kind of concerned that it was a push mostly by English clubs, and then French clubs going, just give us what we want and we'll support whoever.
Yeah.
And what they wanted was to move out, I think, the knockout rounds by 2-3 weeks, which they got, and which is now reversed because it was a disaster.
Yeah, it didn't work.
I think English clubs and the Premiership drastically overestimated the value that they can get out of it. They looked at French clubs getting massive deals, and I think there was jealousy there. And then, they can't seem to get, or the championship now can't get the required sponsorship or the desired sponsorship. And I don't know, like, I haven't heard anything. Maybe something's there, maybe something's developing, maybe something's in the background.
It's
and it'll
been
be
very
announced
little.
soon,
I think it feels like they're hiding behind the World Cup hype. Just to me, it feels like they've just been completely silent. They're not going to discuss it. Nobody needs to put it in their paper to sell papers because there is World Cup, and they're just going to tick along and see how it goes. I think if the World Cup is a success, then they might get a bigger draw, and so they might be able to ask for more money, even, or at least get sponsors. So we'll see what happens. I mean, as long as this, I'm starting to get a little bit. I mean, I know it's for the fans. Sponsors are for the fans, and you're selling alcohol, and you don't want to get on a moral high horse. But it's strange. It's a strange thing. I feel like alcohol and professional sports don't really mix very well. But obviously, the fans are going to drink what they're going to drink, and they're going to enjoy what they're going to enjoy. I don't know. You can't be picky at this point. So I don't even know why I brought it up. But it is just, to me, it's a bit odd. But it's just the way it's done, I suppose.
I mean, I'm not really against it, especially naming rights for alcohol for these competitions. I don't know why. Just going back in the last 15 years, you had the Guinness Premiership, you had the Magners League, and now you have the Guinness Pro 12.
Yeah.
I don't know what other examples there are out there. There's a couple, I can't think of them now, lower league stuff as well, that would have also had, or still has, sponsorship by alcohol or naming rights for alcohol. I see your point. You don't want to start encouraging something like that, but at the same time, I've never really thought that it has been the reason for me drinking. I mean, as you said, you're at a match, you're going to drink anyway.
It's rugby culture anyway. I think it's the default. It's a default response.
And I've never seen anybody get aggressive at a rugby match.
No, that is one. There isn't. There are very few. It's not a hooliganism sport. Put it that way, and and it's so expensive anyway to buy a drink at a game. Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
it's Twickenham anyway, but not necessarily at Sandy Park.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious about, just hypothetically speaking, the only reason why the discussion about British and Irish Cup, not at this level, the level up, really came about is always going to be about money, and how can you really package and market this? Again, the only way it would ever exist is if there's no European Cup. First off. And that's going to be a loss of money and income for a lot of British and Irish clubs. The French couldn't give a fuck. They're swimming in money anyway. And that's the whole point. And, a lot of it is, could a British and Irish Cup be a counterweight to this massive French money league? And could they get remotely the same, size TV deals and sponsorship? And No, I honestly don't know. It's interesting.
It's all
but
about viewing numbers. I think it's all about viewing numbers during this World Cup, and I think everybody's sitting with bated breath, hoping against hope that. Well, you were talking earlier to someone on Reddit about viewing figures and how they get massively inflated and that. But if I'm sitting here now in just south of London, whatever. There is a huge interest in rugby in London, but it's in very specific places. Now, there's a huge interest in the West Country, in Bristol, in a very isolated area. Well, not isolated, just the whole of the West Country is rugby crazy. So there are teams down the road from each other that are local rivals and derbies. You literally walk down there, you play them, and then you can go and chill in your own clubhouse if you have a fight. But often you just, you go back and have a drink. And I think if there is that level of attentiveness in the whole of the British and Irish, just the whole area, then that's great. But I don't think there's that level of attentiveness in Wales. I don't know. I mean, Chard Cheese, you're sitting where you're sitting now. Would you say that you could go down your street and there would be another die-hard rugby fan? I mean, I don't know how big your street is, but is there another die-hard rugby fan that you would vaguely know of on your street?
Possibly. I mean, it's a bit weird living in Cardiff or Swansea, considering the places the football team's in right now. I mean, they're fairly big at the moment. Swansea more so, obviously, but there is quite a divide there, I suppose. But there's a big rugby following in Cardiff. Okay. For me, I suppose it's quite a diverse place in sporting terms. I mean, there's quite a big hockey following now as well.
Really?
Ice hockey. So it's difficult to gauge, I suppose. But I mean, when it comes down to it, you can pretty much take anyone who's a fan of any sport and put them in a match and they'll enjoy it. Especially in Cardiff, it's interchangeable, I suppose, with what people are fans of. So I think there'd definitely be more of an interest in Welsh clubs playing Irish and English teams regularly more than there is against playing Scottish or Italian. I think, or French, like with the exceptions of teams like Toulon or Toulouse or something. When they come down, obviously that's a big occasion. Yeah. But if they're playing Brive or something, there's no real interest.
No one gives a shit. Yeah, no one really cares.
If Cardiff were regularly playing Bath, Bristol, Gloucester, and teams like that, as well as teams like Leinster and Munster and Glasgow, it would be a lot more popular.
There'd be roaring crowds. I mean, I've just got it's a weird feeling. I've just got nostalgic about, because my granddad's downstairs right now. He used to play for Bath. He was telling me that they used to play the Cardiff boys, and they used to go around Wales and play Gloucester and all these other teams, and it used to be great fun. It used to be a riot, but then everything gets isolated, and suddenly this great rugby community is divided all of a sudden. And I don't know, it's just a little bit it's a bit of a letdown, really.
Yeah. Everybody, if you talk to a Leicester fan or a Saints fan, apart from English clubs, which clubs do you love to play? And you will hear Munster and Leinster coming up quite often.
They're really not. I mean, it's got to the point now where only the historic West Country clubs remember playing these Welsh clubs. London don't care. London, I don't think Wasps will care about playing the Blues. I don't think they'll care about playing the Ospreys. They're just not. There's not the same drive. Whereas there were obviously these old rivalries, and the North don't care. Newcastle. When did Newcastle ever play Ponty? There's nothing there. So maybe if they tried to expand it, but then in the same way, Exeter don't have a big rivalry with Newcastle or Sale. We just play them. So I don't think you necessarily need a rivalry for there to be competition, but it does help. It definitely helps. And the fact that England and Ireland do have this big competition, because London clubs want to beat Leinster, they want to beat Munster, but for some reason there's not a big drive to beat the Scarlets. No, it's just like, okay, there's the Scarlets. It's a good game, but it's not the same drive.
I think it helped on the Welsh side of things, because I mean in Newport and more so in Cardiff and Swansea, there's a huge university population, huge.
Yeah.
And a lot of whom are English. And I hear them all the time go down the Elms Park. There's always English students trying to figure out what's going on and things like that. And there's a huge interest. I mean, there's the varsity match between Cardiff Uni and Swansea Uni that goes on in Millennium Stadium or Liberty, which always gets a huge crowd and it's always a good game. And I think if with the English clubs got involved, considering the English population of South Wales, it would help a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of Irish history in South Wales or Irish heritage in South Wales compared to the amount of English there is, which would help on this side of the bridge, I suppose. But yeah, like you mentioned, apart from the West Country teams, I can't imagine Northampton really caring about going down to Rodney Parade. So it's difficult to.
Anyway, I think we're going to sum it up there and stop it because I need to go on and do some stuff. I think it's been good. I'm definitely going to edit it down, but it's been nice. I reckon we'll get a good half an hour at least. We've done an hour and 20 minutes of talk, so.
Yeah, a lot of it was bollocksology from me, as usual.
We can cut what we need to cut, and we can leave in what we need to leave in. There's plenty of talk about about all three. To be honest, we focused a fair amount on Wales, but it's been nice. Chard Cheese, you've been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been nice to talk.
It's good it's been good to hear your voice. No, it genuinely is, because it's just some good point of view, and it's quite interesting. I never knew that they were all on their own, and when I looked at that map, that was quite a weird sensation to see the whole of North Wales covered by the Scarlets, who are literally based on the south coast. It's a bit strange, but yeah, I've never pictured it like that. Yeah, I've never pictured it like that before.
You see, I always thought that there were clubs dotted around I suppose central Wales and a couple up in the north. I knew that the north, especially the northeast, was definitely more football focused, but holy fuck, I didn't realise there was literally one club, and that club has only sprung up, I think, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, it is mostly valleys and west base. I mean, if you look at the concentration of clubs in the valleys, you can't walk around most of these places without accidentally walking into a clubhouse. It's insane.
Go for a run. Chard Cheese has been fun. Yeah, I'm going to cut recording. This has been Line Break Rugby. Hope you enjoyed.